Hey guys, MaxLPQueen here, and welcome back to another episode in our Nevada State Eco Zoo saga. So, I believe this is probably one of the first zoos that has taken me this long to complete. But you know what? It was all worth it in the end. We've only got a couple more episodes here of the Nevada State Eco Zoo. We've only got a few more things to do, as you can see on our gold ranking there, until we can get our gold star. But we need 2 more exhibits, aka habitats, and we need to release 4 Timberwolves into the wild. So I went ahead and did that, went ahead and released a couple of them, so that way whenever we are ready to complete the scenario, all we gotta do is release the last remaining wolves, and we will have completed the whole entire thing. But the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add in our 12th habitat, I believe. We have to have 13 before we can complete the scenario, and at this point in time we have to have just 2 more, so I'm not really worried about making it look as perfect as possible, especially not after the trouble I had with this one. Maybe some of you guys could help me out a bit because I have no idea what went wrong. I'm not really sure what I did wrong that didn't work, but I followed the tutorial. Like I said, if you would like to check out the tutorial that I followed for this walkthrough of the zoo, it will be linked in the description. But yeah, I followed it pretty much exactly like they did. Tried to do it the best that I could to the best of my abilities. But for some reason, it did not work out for me like it did for them, and I couldn't figure out why, so I kind of just gave up on it. Because it really wasn't that important at the end of the day. It was just a couple more exhibits, that's all I needed, and then I was ready to get on with the next scenario. But you'll see about that, of course, when we get to it. Right now, of course, we have to go ahead and add in our pathing and our little area for the actual habitat itself. So I don't know if I showed it or not, but I do plan to put in the next animal as a hippopotamus. So we're going to be utilizing the water there, or so I thought. As you can see, we still have an open spot in the water that we could use for an animal that's likes more aquatic things, more water. And since we're not able to, I don't know if I mentioned that, but in this scenario, you're not able to place water into an animal's exhibit. So you're only allowed to use the water that is given to you on the land, which means we're only allowed to use this one little area here, and then of course, as you saw in a previous episode, the water over before you get into the entrance where I placed the flamingos and the Nile monitors. That's all the water we get for this zoo, and we don't get to use anything else. So I'm going to go ahead and place the hippo exhibit here. Not really sure why we went with a hippo, but hey, if we got water, I guess we might as well use it. The first thing we need to do, of course, though, is level the ground down to the water surface so that the animal would be able to get to the water. I never had any issues with this with the other sides of the water areas. The Ooh. Every time I get to talking like this, I always yawn. I guess because I spend most of my day not really having full, long 30 to 40-minute conversations. But anyway, yeah, we never had any trouble with the other habitats with getting water and having to be able to use the water as an area for them. They just went down into the water. It was already connected. It was all good. But for some reason, up here on this side, there was like a little lip, I guess you could see. There's like a little lip around the edge of the water where I guess they can't exactly get into the water for some reason without having to have like a ramp or something, or have some way to get down into the water, because if they can, then they can't get back up out of the water, I guess. I'm not really sure how it works and why it worked out the way it did. Also, the tutorial utilized a lot of the null, I guess you would call them, the null fencing, which is basically just no fencing whatsoever. If you use the environment that you have, you can pretty much connect an exhibit to land like this, and then you can use the null where you could go through the rocks and there won't be any fence placed, but it will still count as a habitat. As you can see here, I did try it because I thought I would try to utilize it, but then I realized for some reason for me, I always have the most terrible luck with keeping animals inside of their exhibits, and they always want to escape. So I just thought, you know what, for this tutorial, mine doesn't look exactly like theirs anyway. So I'm just going to use the regular fencing, and just better to be safe than sorry, because I don't want basically another Garl situation where they're escaping constantly and I have to keep spending multiple thousands of dollars on capturing them, capturing them, and then placing them back into the exhibit, which honestly it doesn't really matter. As you can see, we have $630,134.51, so we're not low on cash whatsoever. But now we have to, well, what I thought would be a pretty good exhibit, unfortunately, like this, or unlike the other zoo games that have been available in the past, you can't connect habitats to each other and them just be their own one. For some reason, if it has multiple gates, they don't consider it a habitat, or it's not used as one, and you can't really place any animals, or it just becomes confusing for the workers basically. I don't know why, but apparently it just does. So I had to kind of rearrange the fencing a bit and kind of figure out how to get it to work, because it just didn't want to work the right way. I guess it wouldn't have mattered in the end, but at this point we were so far into the scenario that I didn't want to risk having anything just stop our momentum. So I kind of just played it safe and was like, all right, I'll just go ahead and redo the whole entire fencing and fix it up. But first, we need to go ahead and do our education boards and our speakers like we always do for every single exhibit that I've done, along with our recycling bins and the benches for the guests to sit on, and then possibly some lights as well, and our donation boxes, of course. You cannot forget those. Those are very important whenever playing through the scenarios. And then after that, we can go ahead and get into the animal trading and get our hippopotamus. I don't believe I got it yet. I can't remember if I got the hippopotamus yet or if I didn't get it. But we're also still doing research as well. I don't know why. I probably should have stopped doing research, in all honesty. There wasn't really a point to it anymore. I guess if you want to continue the scenario afterwards, you can do this. But I don't know. I don't know why I was still doing research at this point. But here you can see, of course, where it is invalid or something because there's multiple habitat gates. Didn't really see a problem with it, but thought it would be an issue. So definitely going to be going through and correcting that, of course. And then we'll also need to replace the name of the exhibit as well, because we are going to be adding in a new work zone, or adding on to an existing work zone and editing some other work zones, because we need to add in so that the workers will come by and they will use the they will not use, but they will come by and they will take care of the animals to some degree. But as you can see, I'm trying to figure out what exactly to do about this fencing, because I'm just assuming that you could do it like this, but I guess you can't. So I've just got to, I guess, kind of extend out the fencing so that it doesn't touch the other exhibit. I think you can have multiple exhibits, but multiple gates, but you can't have multiple habitats connecting to each other. So I think if you do just 2 connecting to each other, it's fine. But if you were to do like 3, it would end up not really working out too well. So now we're going to work on, I think that's would be the staff areas, the work areas and stuff like that. Try to fix that up and make everything where we don't have an issue, running into an issue with the workers not coming into the area that needs to be taken care of. Again, I would highly recommend doing this. It's just something that I think should be done to help out with, not like crowding per se, but to help out with your keepers not just like being run all over the place ragged, and so they're actually able to feed each of the animals and take care of them without their needs slowly going down over time, and not being taken care of because there's way too many exhibits for that little keepers. Because you can have as like a little bit of keepers. You don't have to have too many keepers. You just have to have a good work zone for them, because if you have, let's say, 5 exhibits and 2 keepers, you can have one keeper working on 2 and then one working on the other 3, and they won't be overworked and they'll feel totally fine. But if you get to a point where you've got like 6, 8, 10 habitats, and you have 3 or 4 keepers, it can be a little overwhelming for them and they can be a little upset about it. So definitely would recommend the work zones, and also the training as well. There's a little arrow, if you could see, there's a little arrow connecting the there's a little arrow next to the workers where you can train them and get their stars up. The more they're trained, then obviously the more that they are going to the more that they're trained, the better they're going to do, I should say. I don't know why I got confused there. But anyway, I had a little issue with my work zones. That's why I had to cut it there for a second, because apparently I forgot to add in a couple of exhibits down there at the bottom, or the habitats, into a work zone. I don't know, it got mixed up somehow, but I ended up fixing it. Anyway, we have got another wolf that we have released into the wild, and we unfortunately have a surplus of Titan beetles as well. You do need to be careful with those actual exhibits. I know I mentioned it a lot, but yes, the actual exhibits, not the habitats, because they can reproduce fast and with a lot of animals. So you will probably have to go through and release some into the wild. But by doing so, it does help you get conservation credits. So it is kind of worth it. Because I did, as you can see, run into a problem here where I had a lot of conservation credits in the beginning of the game. So anytime that there was an animal that I needed, I would just get 2 of them with the conservation credits. Didn't really matter. I had plenty. But by the time that we started getting to the end of the scenario here, ended up having a bit of an issue with conservation credits, as you'll see. Probably this episode, maybe not, probably in the next one, but basically I ended up having to release a lot into the wild and just barely had enough credits to be able to get the final animal that we'll be putting in on the next episode, which will be part 2 of our pretty much finale of the Nevada State Eco Zoo. So that's basically what I'm doing now. I'm just trying to get enough, because as you can see, we only have 545 credits, and it is slowly going up and increasing over time. But I just decided that it would be better to go ahead and release some while we could anyway, just to kind of help out to get enough, because it's 634 for the female down there, and I only need 1. That's all I need technically. So I just need a few more credits to be able to get it. So I have to just a little bit of stuff I just have to go ahead and release to the wild. In the end, it doesn't really matter. But I needed to have that final animal into the little place here. I needed to have the final one in there, because that's what we're going to do next, is we're going to finish up the scenario, and I'm going to have 13 in the zoo by the end. We only have 11, aka 12 right now, because we're getting ready to place the hippos in. Still doing some research, by the way. Again, I don't know why. I really should not be doing the research. I don't know why I keep doing it. But anyway, here is where we are going to run into the issue that I could not figure out. Hopefully you guys can help me out with this. But we have placed our hippo into the exhibit, as you can see. And of course, we need to do our terrain modification tools, where we can get the terrain looking and feeling better and more homey for our hippopotamus there. And as you can see up there at the top, the space is very limited. Apparently the water is not enough space, and apparently the hippo cannot get into the water. Not really sure why, but it can't get into the water. I can see the land there, like I should be able to get it into the water. I was watching the tutorial and they were using some type of ramp or something. I figured it was an enrichment ramp, which I think it was. It was like the wooden wall enrichment ramp that they were using in the water to try to give it some more area. I thought I'll just kind of extend out the fencing a bit. I'll put it all the way out, maybe give it a little bit more room, and maybe it would help. Maybe we just have too little space. But it's very difficult to try to figure out what's wrong whenever you don't exactly know what's going on. And honestly, at this point in the scenario, I'm kind of to the point where I do not care anymore about the way things are looking. We're just ready to complete this thing. And it's really frustrating, but there's nothing I can do about it. I just gotta go with what I got, and I gotta try to make it work. And also, I was trying to extend out the fencing as well, because I thought if I was able to do that, then maybe I would be able to get the hippo an area where it would be able to enter the water. Because as you can see on the other side there, the water buffalo can enter the water just fine, and they use it all the time. I don't understand why the hippo had an issue with it. I'm not really sure what was the issue with that, the deal with that. It confused me quite a bit. So in the end, it ended up still being a frustrating experience, but like I just wish I could understand what went wrong and why it went the way that it did, because I didn't really understand it. I mean, I thought the more water, the more space, it would be fine. We wouldn't have to worry about anything, and the habitat would be just fine as long as they're able to enter it. And I figured anything would be better than just nothing, right? So let's make it a little bit bigger. If space is an issue, then maybe if we can extend out the fencing a little bit, then the space won't be a problem, and we'll just, just go on with what we've been doing, right? That sounds somewhat like a good idea. I decided to try to see if I could figure out how to use this null fencing a little bit. And I didn't know if it would exactly work or not. But I thought it would be somewhat useful, since they claim that it works and it's very useful. So I don't know. But apparently there's this one little piece of land here that will not go flat. Don't know why. Don't know what reason it did for that, but I just was so frustrated with it and so annoyed at that point that I'm just like, whatever. I'll just cover it with rocks. I mean, rocks cover up a lot of hurt. Apparently we used it a lot in this scenario to cover up a bunch of different things that I just wish this little habitat would have been so much easier, but I don't understand. I just don't understand what I was doing wrong and why it was not working out the way it was supposed to. But here we go. So I got the ramp here, which is what I'm pretty sure that I saw they had. They had the ramp facing the water and kind of going into the water a little bit, and then kind of in the land a little bit. And when they did that and they put it down there, it worked. The hippo was able to go down into the water and was able to use it, and they had enough space and land area. But when I did it, I don't understand why I couldn't get it to work. I tried multiple times, but could not figure it out. I thought maybe if I placed 2 of them, maybe the ramp was too short. Maybe they needed like a lot more space or something, because they're hippos. Maybe they needed it to be a bit bigger. I was just so confused. I didn't understand at all why it was doing the way it was. But in the end, I think I just gave up on it, unfortunately. like you can see, it's right next to the water. I don't see why there's an issue with them not being able to enter the water. It should work just like a ramp, but it never ended up working like a ramp. I don't know, I couldn't figure it out. I couldn't. As you can see, still didn't work. So, in the end, I don't know. I just honestly have no idea. I just decided to, I guess, extend out the exhibit a bit more. I just wanted to see if I could somewhat get it to look somewhat decent, maybe? At this point, I was worried about welfare. Overall welfare of the animals. I believe in the gold part of the scenario, you have to have an overall animal welfare of like 85%. And I had already completed that, but I wasn't sure if having the overall welfare to 85% would actually be affected by that. But luckily for me, it didn't matter because since we had already completed it earlier in the scenario, and it didn't count for all of the exhibits, it just counted for like, I think it was what, 8, 9 of them. You had to have overall animal welfare up to at least 85% or something like that. Either way, we had already completed that one, so I wasn't worried about that anymore. And at this point, the ramps just weren't working. I don't know why, but the ramps just weren't working. I tried rotating them. I tried making them move a bit more into the ground, out of the ground. I don't know. Couldn't figure it out. It was just something that I was at a loss for, and I didn't know what else to do. So it was just like a guessing game to try to see if it would work, but it never ended up working in the end. Anyway, we're pretty much done here with this one. The only thing that we have left to do is put in, like, you know, the food and enrichment items and stuff like that. I'm not even worried about plant diversity anymore or plants or anything like that, because the only thing I want to do is complete this scenario. So I'm making it so that they have a little bit of enrichment items, they got some food, they got some water, and they're good to go. So that's unfortunately going to be it for this episode. Unfortunately, we're going to end off a bit sooner than the others, but there isn't really much left to do. And the last thing that we really have to do, actually, is we have to finish up our last habitat, and then we'll be good to go with the end of the scenario. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this episode. Again, if you want to see how it's done the correct way, and maybe you can get it to work and I can't for some reason, couldn't figure it out. Maybe you could figure it out from their tutorial. Again, I'll link their YouTube page in the description so you can check it out. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you in the next episode of some more Planet Zoo.